The cold December wind rattled the thin windows of Harper Lane's tiny Brooklyn apartment as she pressed a trembling hand against her stomach. A sharp pain shot through her side, stealing her breath. She stumbled toward the kitchen counter, gripping it for balance, trying to stay upright long enough to reach her phone. Her vision blurred, her pulse quickened, and panic surged through her chest. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She opened her messages, her fingers shaking so hard she could barely type, but she forced out the words anyway. "Preston, please. I need you. Something's wrong." She hit send. Across Manhattan, at the lavish Plaza Hotel, Preston Hale didn't feel a single tremor of concern. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, he lifted a glass of champagne as if the world belonged to him. The crystal chandeliers glowed above him, casting a golden shimmer across the velvet lounge and the young woman leaning against his shoulder. He didn't hear his phone buzz. He didn't care to. He was too busy whispering promises he never fulfilled, too busy pretending to be a man Harper believed he was. Harper tried to take a step, but her knees buckled. She dropped to the floor, the phone slipping from her hand. The room spun, the air thinning as she gasped for breath. Her message sat on Preston's screen, delivered, ignored, forgotten. She reached toward the glowing device, but her fingers only brushed the cold tile. "Preston," she whispered into the empty room. Lights blurred, sirens echoed faintly in the distance, and Harper's world began to dim. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, slow, uneven, fading as the last bit of strength left her body. And at that same moment, in the warmth of the plaza, Preston finally turned his phone over and glanced at the screen. What he saw made him freeze. But it wasn't Harper's desperate message that shocked him. It was something far, far worse. Harper Lane had never imagined her life would shrink into something so quiet, so colorless, so breakable. At 30, she lived in a cramped third-floor walk-up in Brooklyn. Its peeling paint, flickering lights, and drafty windows, a constant reminder of how far she stood from the dreams she once carried. Before Preston, she had been hopeful, determined, someone who believed she could climb her way into a better life. But marriage had not lifted her. It had folded her into the background. She worked long hours as an administrative assistant at a small finance office, the kind of place where no one learned her name even after 2 years. Every morning she rode the subway packed shoulder to shoulder with strangers, holding her tote bag tightly against her chest as if protecting the tiny life inside her. Her pregnancy wasn't the glowing kind people posted about on social media. It was exhausting, fragile, marked by dizziness, sharp pains, and doctors' warnings she tried her best to ignore. But the hardest part wasn't the fatigue, it was the loneliness. Preston used to be gentle, once back when he was still a man chasing success rather than worshiping it. He had promised her the world. A home in Manhattan, a family, stability, love. Instead, he left her to manage their entire life alone while he climbed ladders built from charm and lies. "You'll be fine, Harper," he always said when she begged him to come home earlier. "You're strong. You don't need me for every little thing." Every little thing. As if carrying their child was a minor inconvenience. Money was tight, too. Preston controlled every account, every bill, every card. Harper stretched her small paycheck across groceries, transit, and prenatal vitamins she sometimes skipped because the cheaper brand was all she could afford. Most nights, she ate crackers and soup to keep the nausea down. She hid her worn-down shoes with polish. She kept her cracked iPhone case turned inward so no one would notice. And still, she told herself things would get better, that Preston would soften again, that once the baby arrived, he would finally see her. But deep inside, Harper felt a cold truth, forming a quiet dread that whispered she was completely alone. That night, before the pain struck, she had looked at herself in the mirror, fingers brushing the faint circles under her eyes. "Just hold on," she whispered to her reflection. "Just a few more months." If only she knew that Preston wasn't planning for months, he was planning an escape. And Harper was about to discover the first crack in the life he'd carefully built on lies. While Harper lay curled on her apartment floor, clutching her stomach in pain, Preston Hale was wrapped in a completely different world, one dripping in luxury, ego, and deception. The Plaza Hotel glowed like a jewel on Fifth Avenue, its marble floors reflecting golden light as guests in designer suits and sparkling gowns drifted through the lobby. Preston walked among them as if he belonged there, as though the building itself bowed to his presence. He wore a impeccably tailored charcoal suit, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie pinned with a subtle silver bar. His shoes had been polished until they reflected the chandelier above him. Everything about him was curated, intentional. This was the version of Preston he loved most, the one that made him forget he had a wife struggling in a dim apartment across the river. Beside him was Kendra Vale, a striking woman with bright red lipstick, a Dior dress hugging her curves, and a laugh so loud it drew glances from nearby tables. She leaned against him, tracing a finger along his sleeve as though she was already marking him as hers. "You really think they'll believe you're single tonight?" she teased. Preston smirked. "They'll believe whatever I need them to." He wasn't here for romance, though Kendra certainly made the evening more entertaining. He was here for investors, powerful men, people who could open doors he'd been banging on for years. With Harper gone from the conversation, he could rebrand himself as a polished, unattached executive without domestic complications. A server passed with a tray of champagne, each glass catching the warm glow of the chandelier. Preston grabbed one and held it up to the light, admiring the golden bubbles before taking a slow sip. Everything tasted better when he pretended his life was perfect. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. He didn't check. Probably a notification. Maybe Harper. He didn't care. Kendra leaned closer. "You're tense," she whispered. "I'm fine," he said, though there was a flicker behind his composed expression, something colder, calculating. Preston wasn't just avoiding Harper. He was preparing to erase her completely. As he guided Kendra toward the private lounge, a man stepped out from behind a marble column, watching him with narrowed, almost knowing eyes. Someone Preston didn't recognize, but someone who clearly recognized him. And that stranger was about to become the first thread pulling apart Preston Hale's carefully woven lies. Harper tried to steady her breathing, but each inhale felt like a blade slicing through her ribs. The pain had started as a dull pressure, the kind she'd grown used to during her difficult pregnancy. But tonight was different. Tonight, the pain roared. It curled around her spine, tightened across her abdomen, and spread like fire through her chest. Her vision shimmered as though someone had dimmed the world around her. She reached again for her phone lying inches away on the kitchen tile, its cracked screen glowing faintly. The message to Preston still sat there, delivered. Not opened, not read, not cared for. She dragged herself toward it, her palms scraping across the cold floor. Her breath hitched, the room tilted. The edges of her sight began to blur. A drip of sweat slid down the back of her neck as she clenched her jaw, fighting to stay conscious. "Please, not now," she whispered, as if begging her own body to hold on a little longer. The apartment around her was silent, painfully silent. The old radiator hissed in the corner, a lonely mechanical exhale that only deepened the emptiness of the room. Her coat hung crooked on a nail. A single lamp flickered weakly from the living room. The scent of chamomile tea, still cooling on the counter, lingered in the air, a soft reminder of the calm she'd tried desperately to create for herself earlier that evening. But peace had never been in her control. Not tonight. Harper tried to push herself upright, but her arm buckled. She collapsed fully onto her side, a soft cry escaping her lips. A sharp jolt of pain tore through her stomach. Her fingers instinctively wrapped around her midsection, as though she could protect her baby through sheer will. "Stay with me," she whispered, unsure whether she was talking to herself or the tiny heartbeat inside her. Her phone vibrated again. For one hopeful second, she thought Preston had finally read her message. She stretched her trembling hand forward, fingertips brushing the edge of the device. But when she turned it over, the heartbreak hit like a punch. It wasn't Preston. It was the hospital's automated reminder about her missed prenatal appointment. A reminder she'd skipped because Preston said he couldn't drive her and she needed to toughen up. Tears blurred her eyes. She blinked hard, but the world was fading, colors softening, sounds blurring, breath slipping. Just before her consciousness dissolved, a faint knock echoed from her front door. Soft, hesitant, almost unsure. And the voice that followed was the last one she ever expected to hear outside her apartment tonight. The knock came again, soft, almost apologetic, but loud enough to slice through the haze, closing in around Harper. She tried to lift her head, but her body felt impossibly heavy, as if gravity had doubled just for her. The apartment blurred, a watercolor fading under running water. Her breathing turned shallow, each inhale a trembling effort. Still, the knock persisted. "Harper? It's Rowan." Rowan Mercer. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. For a moment, the world seemed to pause long enough for her foggy memory to reach back to her early 20s, when Rowan was the only person who made her laugh during those long college night study sessions. He had disappeared into the world of high finance, rising quickly, becoming someone newspapers called a quiet billionaire, though Harper never cared about his wealth. She cared that he was kind, steady, present, everything Preston never managed to be. But what was he doing here? "Harper, are you home?" Rowan asked again, his voice gentle but laced with concern. She tried to answer, but only a faint sound escaped her throat, too weak to carry through the door. Panic clawed at her chest. She needed help. She needed anyone. She tried again, pushing up with shaking arms, but her muscles trembled and gave out. A moment later, she heard Rowan's footsteps shift, the creak of the old hallway floorboard. "Harper, your lights are on. I'm coming in." A pause. I hope that's okay." Her front door clicked. Rowan must have remembered she always forgot to lock it, something he teased her about years ago. The hinges groaned as the door swung open. Rowan stepped inside, the glow from the hallway spilling across the floor until it reached her collapsed form. His breath caught. "Harper?" He rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside her. His usually composed voice broke with shock. "Oh my God, Harper, can you hear me?" She forced her eyes open, meeting his worried gaze. Relief washed through her like warmth. She tried to speak, tried to tell him about the pain, about Preston, about everything, but her throat tightened, the words trapped behind her trembling lips. Rowan gently touched her forehead, feeling the cold sweat. "You're burning up. This isn't right. Harper, you need help now." Her fingers twitched, reaching weakly toward her phone. Rowan followed her gaze, grabbing it quickly. The screen lit up. He froze. Not because of the missed reminders, but because Harper's last message was still open, sent to Preston, never answered, time-stamped almost an hour earlier. Rowan's expression darkened, something fierce awakening in his eyes. "Harper," he whispered, "what did he do to you?" And before he could ask anything else, her breathing suddenly changed, shallow, irregular, forcing Rowan to realize he might be seconds away from losing her. Rowan Mercer had spent years navigating billion-dollar crises in boardrooms, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of Harper Lane fading in his arms. Her skin was clammy, her breathing shallow, her lips trembling as if each word cost her more strength than she had left. He slid one arm under her shoulders, lifting her gently. "Harper, stay with me. Just breathe." "I've got you," he whispered, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. Her eyes fluttered open. A weak whimper escaped her. Rowan felt something inside him twist painfully. This was Harper, the girl who used to tease him for being too serious, who once stayed up all night helping him prepare for an internship interview he was terrified to attend. She didn't deserve this. Not the isolation, not the fear, not the abandonment. He reached for her phone again, scrolling through her recent calls. Preston hadn't even tried calling back, not once. Rowan's jaw tightened, a cold fury simmering behind his usual calm. "Of course he didn't come," Harper whispered faintly, surprising him. "He always said..." "I exaggerate." Rowan leaned closer. "You're not exaggerating. You're in trouble. I'm calling 911. Her hand shot up weakly, gripping his wrist. "No, don't call him. Don't let him." Her breath hitched, pain stretching across her features. "Harper, stop. Preston won't be anywhere near you. I promise. Let me save you." He didn't wait for permission. He dialed immediately. As he gave the dispatcher her address, he monitored her breathing. Her chest rose unevenly, each inhale smaller than the last. Sweat dampened her hairline. She winced as a sharp wave of pain rippled through her abdomen. When the dispatcher confirmed an ambulance was on the way, Rowan hung up and pulled Harper closer to his chest, trying to steady her. "Help is coming. Just hold on." She blinked tiredly, tears slipping down her cheeks, not from pain, but from the realization that someone finally stayed. "Why are you here?" she whispered. Rowan swallowed hard. "Because I should have been here a long time ago." Her eyes closed again, her head resting against his arm. "Don't let him take my baby," she breathed. Rowan froze. "Harper, What do you mean? But before she could answer, her body lurched, her breathing turned ragged, her hands slipping from his arm. Harper? Harper. Her eyes didn't open. Outside, faint sirens began to echo through the Brooklyn streets. And Rowan realized the truth. If the paramedics didn't reach them in time, he might lose both Harper and her child before the night was over. The ambulance sliced through the Brooklyn night, red and blue lights flashing across the narrow streets. Inside, Rowan sat beside Harper on the stretcher, gripping the rail with one hand and steadying her with the other. The paramedics worked quickly, oxygen masks secured, vitals monitored, voices low but urgent. Blood pressure dropping, one paramedic called out. Possible placental abruption, another said. We need to get her to Lenox Hill now. Rowan felt his stomach plunge. He wasn't a doctor, but he recognized the fear in their voices and the speed at which they moved. Harper lay motionless, her face pale, her breathing shallow beneath the mask. If not for the tiny rise and fall of her chest, she could have been mistaken for someone already gone. Harper, can you hear me? Rowan murmured, leaning close. You're going to be okay. Just hold on. Her eyelids fluttered, but she didn't respond. The paramedic adjusted the IV line and gave Rowan a tight, sympathetic look. She's fighting. But she should have gotten help earlier. The words landed like a blow. Earlier, when she texted Preston, when he ignored her, when he laughed with another woman while Harper collapsed alone in their apartment, Rowan felt something ignite inside him. Anger, guilt, a protectiveness so fierce it nearly knocked the breath out of him. The ambulance came to a sharp stop. The doors opened, and cold air rushed in. They wheeled Harper out, Rowan following so closely that a paramedic had to guide him aside just to clear space. Inside Lenox Hill Hospital, fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the bustling ER. Nurses hurried between stations, doctors barked instructions, machines beeped in chaotic rhythm. Harper was rushed into a triage room, and Rowan stayed at the doorway, helplessly watching as a medical team surrounded her. Sir, you can't be in here, a nurse said firmly. He stepped back but refused to go far. His hands trembled as he scrubbed them over his face. He had been in boardrooms with hostile investors, had survived mergers that nearly destroyed companies, but none of that compared to the fear of losing Harper tonight. A doctor approached him moments later. Are you family? The question hit him like a punch. He wasn't. Preston was. And Preston was nowhere. I'm the closest she has right now, Rowan said quietly. The doctor studied him for a moment, then nodded. She's in critical condition. We'll update you as soon as we know more. Rowan swallowed hard, staring through the small window where doctors moved around Harper's fragile body. Then his gaze shifted downward to her phone, still in his pocket. The lock screen lit up. A new message from Preston. Rowan's blood ran cold as he read it. Harper, stop bothering me. If you does her in nevera. And at that moment, Rowan knew Preston had no idea Harper might not survive the night, and that ignorance was about to cost him everything. Rowan sat alone in the stark hospital corridor, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling the air around him. The white walls felt too bright, too quiet, too unforgiving. He'd been pacing for nearly 20 minutes, replaying every moment since he'd found Harper on her kitchen floor. Every shallow breath she took haunted him. Every second Preston ignored her message felt like a crime. A door finally opened. Dr. Lynn, a calm but serious woman in navy scrubs, stepped out. Rowan immediately stood. How is she? He asked, voice tight. Dr. Lynn took a breath, folding her hands in front of her. She's stable temporarily, but she's in a very fragile state. The stress, the delayed medical attention, the pregnancy complications, it's a lot for her body to manage. Rowan felt his heart drop. What does she need? Tell me. I'll make it happen. Dr. Lynn shook her head gently. This isn't about access or money. It's about time and care. She has signs of placental rupture. If she had been alone even 15 minutes longer, she paused. She might not have survived. The words slammed into him. He had known Preston was neglectful, but he hadn't realized how close Harper came to dying because of him. And the baby? Rowan asked quietly. Dr. Lynn hesitated. We're monitoring the fetal heartbeat. It's present but faint. We're doing everything we can. Rowan closed his eyes, pain tightening his chest. Harper loved that unborn child already. She spoke of it with awe, touching her belly with gentle hope in moments when she thought no one was watching. Dr. Lynn continued, I must ask, does she have any immediate family we should notify? Rowan's jaw clenched. No, I'm all she has. Dr. Lin studied him for a long moment. Then she's lucky you were there. But Rowan didn't feel lucky. He felt furious. Furious at himself for not being in her life sooner. Furious at Preston for leaving her alone. Furious at the universe for letting someone as gentle as Harper suffer. As Dr. Lin walked back inside, Rowan's phone buzzed again in his pocket. Another message from Preston. Tell Harper to quit the dramatics. Rowan stared at the screen, disbelief turning into something darker, heavier. Preston had no idea Harper was fighting for her life, or he didn't care. Rowan turned toward the hospital entrance, his hands curling into fists. Because Preston Hale was about to walk straight into Lenox Hill, and Rowan was no longer in the mood to stay civil. Preston Hale strutted through the marble lobby of Lenox Hill Hospital like he was walking into a boardroom he already owned. Still dressed in his tailored suit from the plaza, he looked more irritated than worried, pausing only to glance at his reflection in a glass panel. He adjusted his tie, smoothed his hair, and muttered under his breath. I swear, Harper lives for the attention. He had finally checked her message an hour late, mostly because Kendra had noticed he seemed distracted and demanded to know why. Preston read the text, shrugged, and told her Harper had a habit of exaggerating. But then another thought struck him. If Harper ended up in the hospital, it could affect the personal paperwork he'd been filing under her name, and that couldn't happen. So here he was not out of love or concern, but out of self-preservation. He approached the front desk. Harper Hale, where is she? The nurse, unimpressed, typed into her computer. Are you family? I'm her husband, Preston said, flashing his wedding ring like it was a backstage pass. Before she could answer, a shadow loomed behind him. Rowan Mercer. Preston turned, startled by the intensity in Rowan's eyes. Oh, he said, recovering with a scoff. You again? What are you doing here? Rowan stepped closer, posture relaxed but expression razor-sharp. Saving your wife's life. Since you didn't. Preston barked a cold laugh. Don't be dramatic. Harper does this, she plays victim. She's emotional. Pregnant women are. Rowan's jaw ticked. She nearly died tonight. Preston blinked, caught off guard for a split second, but not by concern, by calculation. Is she awake? No, Rowan said. And if she wakes up, it won't be because of you. Dien, every was. Preston rolled his eyes. Spare me the hero speech. Rowan didn't move, didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. Instead, he pulled Harper's phone from his pocket and opened the screen. You should see this, Rowan said. Preston frowned, leaning in. On the display was Harper's last voicemail, one she'd recorded seconds before collapsing. Her voice was shaking, weak, breathless. Preston, please, I'm scared. Something's wrong. Rowan hit play. Harper's broken whisper filled the lobby like a haunting echo. Nurses paused. A passing doctor slowed. Preston's smirk flickered, the first crack in his facade. Then Rowan looked him dead in the eye. That's the sound of your wife begging you to save her. Preston's face palled. But before he could respond, a doctor stepped out of the hallway, scanning the room. Family of Harper Lane? Both men turned. The doctor's expression was grave, too grave. We need to talk. It's about the baby. 1IST. The doctor led Rowan and Preston into a private consultation room, the fluorescent light buzzing faintly overhead. Rowan could feel Preston's tension rising beside him, not from worry, but from the fear of being inconvenienced. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing the three men in a bubble of cold truth. I'm Dr. Wyatt, the physician began, his tone controlled but heavy. I'm overseeing Harper Lane's case. Preston immediately jumped in. Hale, Harper Hale. She uses my last name. No, Rowan interrupted sharply. She doesn't. The doctor looked between them, confused but continuing. Harper experienced a severe placental abruption. It caused significant internal bleeding and oxygen loss. She arrived just in time. Rowan exhaled shakily, a mix of relief and dread swirling in his chest. Preston leaned back, arms crossed. Okay, but she's fine, right? This kind of thing happens. Women dramatize pregnancy. Dr. Wyatt cut him off. No, this does not just happen. This was a life-threatening medical emergency, and it was made worse by a delay in getting help. A moment of silence. The words hung like a blade. Then the doctor continued. We stabilized Harper, but she's still unconscious. We need to monitor her closely. Rowan swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. And the baby? The doctor hesitated just a second too long. The fetal heartbeat is weak, very weak. We're doing everything we can, but the next few hours are critical. Rowan closed his eyes, grief washing over him. Harper's whispered plea echoed in his mind. Don't let him take my baby. When he opened his eyes, Preston was staring blankly at the wall, not in shock, but annoyance. She should have called earlier, Preston muttered, or taken a cab. I can't fix everything for her. Rowan snapped. He stepped forward so fast the doctor startled, and Preston's smug expression faltered. You left her alone, Rowan said quietly, dangerously. You ignored her message. You ignored her pain. She could have died tonight, and your child might still. Preston scoffed. You're being dramatic. Harper is sensitive. Rowan's fists tightened at his sides. Sensitive. That was the word abusers used. Dismissive. Belittling. Cruel. Mr. Hale, Dr. Wyatt interjected, voice firm. Your wife is not overreacting. She was minutes away from cardiac arrest. Have it. Preston's expression flickered just briefly with fear. Then the doctor added, softer now. If she wakes up, she'll need support. Real support. Rowan's jaw clenched. She'll have it. From me. Preston turned sharply. She's my wife. Rowan stared at him, unblinking. Then act like it. A nurse suddenly burst through the door, breathless. Dr. Harper Lane's condition just changed. You need to come, now. The doctor rushed out. Rowan and Preston froze, because the nurse's final words echoed back into the room. We may be losing the heartbeat. The hallway outside, Harper's room pulsed with tension. Nurses moved quickly, alarms beeped in sharp, uneven rhythms, and Rowan stood frozen, watching the medical team disappear behind sliding doors. The words losing the heartbeat replayed in his mind like a siren. Preston hovered several steps back, pacing, muttering curses under his breath, more irritated than terrified. Rowan couldn't stand still. His pulse hammered as he tried to make sense of everything Harper had whispered before losing consciousness. Don't let him take my baby. What had she meant? Why would Preston want to take anything from her? He needed answers. Rowan stepped away from the chaos and pulled Harper's phone from his pocket. The screen was smeared with fingerprints, hers, his, maybe even dried tears. He opened the voicemail again, listening to her fractured, frightened breaths. It hurt to hear, but he forced himself to. He had to understand everything she'd been carrying alone. Then something caught his eye. A notification badge on her cloud drive. Rowan opened it. At first, he saw nothing unusual: photos, old documents, voice memos, but one file was marked with a red exclamation point. A recording. Time-stamped 3 days ago. Rowan tapped it. Harper's soft voice came through, shaky but determined. If anything happens to me, someone needs to hear this. End quote. Rowan felt the air leave his lungs. Then another voice entered the recording. Preston's. Cold, sharp, calculating. Make sure the account stays under her name. If regulators ask, she signed everything. She won't question it. She never questions anything. Rowan's blood ran cold. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't a bad marriage. This was exploitation. Harper wasn't just scared of losing her child. She had been scared of losing her freedom, her life, because Preston had been funneling money through accounts in her name without her knowledge. The recording continued. Kendra's voice joined in, laughing lightly. And if she finds out? She won't, Preston replied. And if she does, who's going to believe her? She's emotional, pregnant, unstable. I've set the narrative perfectly. Rowan's grip tightened around the phone so hard he nearly cracked the case. He wasn't just dealing with a negligent husband. He was dealing with a man who had built an entire criminal scheme on Harper's back. A man who planned to disappear and leave her holding the blame. Rowan looked toward the hallway where Preston stood, arguing with a nurse about visitation policies. A fire ignited in Rowan's chest. He would not let Harper wake up into a nightmare. He would not let Preston destroy what little she had left. Rowan took a step toward Preston, determination sharp in every stride, ready to confront him with the recording. But before he reached him, a doctor rushed out of Harper's room, eyes wide. We need her husband. Now. It's life or death she's asking for him. The request hit Rowan like a punch. She's asking for her husband. For a moment, he stood frozen, torn between heartbreak and fury. Harper, barely conscious, barely breathing, was asking for the one man who had abandoned her, exploited her, and nearly cost her life. It wasn't fair, but Rowan understood. Trauma had a long shadow, and even in the darkest moments, people reached for the familiar, not the deserving. Preston straightened immediately, smoothing his suit jacket as though preparing for a photo op. "Of course she wants me," he said smugly. "I'll handle this." Rowan blocked his path. "No," Rowan said quietly. "You're not going in there. Not until we talk." Preston's eyebrows shot up. "Move. She's my wife." Rowan's chest tightened. "And you treated her like a disposable asset. You left her to die tonight." Preston scoffed. "You're being dramatic again. Harper exaggerates everything. If she really needed help, she would have kept calling." Rowan's jaw flexed. She couldn't. She collapsed. For the first time, a flicker of discomfort crossed Preston's eyes, but only for a second. "Well, she's obviously still alive, so your hero speech is unnecessary." Rowan pulled the phone from his pocket. "You should hear something before you go in." He hit play. Harper's scared, breathless voice filled the hallway. Then Preston's own voice echoed from the recording, cold, calculating, unmistakable. "Make sure the account stays under her name. Regulators will think she signed everything. She won't question it." Preston's face drained of color. "You recorded me?" he hissed. "No," Rowan snapped. "Harper did, because she knew exactly what you were doing." Preston lunged for the phone, but Rowan stepped back. A few nurses looked over, concerned. Rowan held the device tightly, eyes locked on Preston. "She trusted you," Rowan said, voice shaking with anger. "And you planned to ruin her, to leave her holding the blame." Preston's smile returned slowly, bitterly. "No one will believe that recording. It won't matter." "Oh, it will," Rowan replied, "because I'm not the only one who's heard it." Preston blinked, thrown off. "What does that mean?" Before Rowan could answer, the door to Harper's room slid open. Dr. Wyatt appeared, urgency etched across his features. "We don't have time for this," he said sharply. "Her blood pressure is crashing. She's awake, but barely. She's asking for her husband." Preston smirked in triumph and moved to step forward. But Dr. Wyatt raised a hand. "Not you," he said firmly. Preston froze. "Excuse me?" Dr. Wyatt pointed directly at Rowan. "She wants him." And as Rowan stepped into Harper's room, Preston realized for the first time he had lost control. The room was dim, lit only by a single overhead lamp and the soft glow of the monitors keeping Harper alive. Rowan stepped inside, the steady beeping of the machines echoing like fragile heartbeats. Harper lay pale against the sheets, her hair damp, her breath shallow but present. Her eyes fluttered open the moment she sensed him. "Rowan," she whispered, voice thin and cracking. He moved to her side instantly. "I'm here. I'm right here." She managed a weak, exhausted smile. "You came back." His chest tightened. "I should have come sooner." She blinked slowly, her lashes trembling. "Where's Preston?" Rowan hesitated. "Outside." Harper swallowed, her throat bobbing painfully. Don't let him take anything else from me." He leaned closer. "He won't. Not your life, not your child, not your freedom." A tear rolled down her cheek. Rowan brushed it away gently. "I was so scared," Harper whispered. "I thought I was dying alone." "You weren't alone," he said, voice breaking. "Not anymore." Harper's gaze drifted toward the small bedside drawer, her fingers twitching weakly in its direction. Rowan opened it for her. Inside was a folded envelope, slightly crumpled, edges worn as though it had been opened and closed 100 times. "For Preston," she murmured. Rowan stiffened. "Harper." "No," she whispered. "Not for him. For whoever found me. I didn't know if I'd have time to explain." Rowan slid the envelope open. Inside was a handwritten letter, her handwriting shaky but still delicate. The first line made his breath catch. "If you're reading this, something has happened to me." He read silently, each word cutting deeper. "I know Preston has been using my name to sign documents. I don't understand them all, but I know they aren't right. He keeps saying I'm too emotional to remember details. If anything happens to me, please don't let him say it was my fault. I'm scared he's planning something I can't stop. I'm scared he wants to disappear. But I'm more scared he'll take the baby away from me, alive or not. Please, whoever reads this, Help me." Rowan closed the letter, trembling. This wasn't just a plea. It was a confession of a woman trying to leave breadcrumbs in case she didn't survive. Harper's voice broke the silence. "I didn't know who to trust." "You can trust me," Rowan said firmly, "and I promise you, he won't hurt you again." Before Harper could answer, alarms suddenly blared. Her heart monitors spiked. Nurses rushed in, and Rowan was pushed aside as chaos erupted. A single chilling sentence echoed through the room. "We're losing her pressure. Prepare for emergency intervention." If you wanted to do us. The double doors to the operating suite slammed shut, leaving Rowan in a shock-soaked haze. Nurses rushed past him, pushing carts and calling out medical codes, but all Rowan heard was the pounding of his own heartbeat. Harper was somewhere behind those doors fighting again. He pressed a trembling hand against the window, but the blinds were already drawn. The distance between them felt unbearable. A voice suddenly pierced the hallway. "Rowan?" He turned sharply. Kendra Vale stood at the opposite end of the corridor, clutching her Dior clutch like a lifeline. Her lipstick was smudged, her mascara streaked. She looked shaken, not by concern for Harper, but by something else, something that made Rowan's stomach twist. "Kendra," he said coldly, "this isn't the place for you." She swallowed. I know, but Preston called me. He said she wasn't doing well." Rowan stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "And you came here? Why?" Kendra's gaze flickered to the operating doors, then back to Rowan. "To support him, I guess. I didn't think it was this serious." Rowan scoffed. "Of course you didn't." But Kendra didn't snap back like usual. Instead, she wrung her hands nervously. "Rowan, Preston told me something, and now I think maybe I wasn't supposed to hear it." Rowan's breath hitched. "What did he say?" Kendra stepped even closer, lowering her voice. "He said, if Harper died tonight, everything would clean up nicely. He said the documents would make sense and no one would question it because she was," her voice cracked, "emotionally unstable." Rowan felt a cold fury scorch through him. "He said that?" Kendra nodded, wiping beneath her eyes. "And he said once the baby was out of the picture, he'd get to walk away free." A chill ran down Rowan's spine. The letter, the recording, Harper's last whispered fear. Preston wasn't just indifferent. He needed Harper gone. "Why are you telling me this?" Rowan demanded. Kendra hesitated. "Because I didn't know. I thought he just wanted a divorce. I didn't think he was using her name for whatever he's hiding." She swallowed again. "And if he goes down for this, he'll drag me with him." "I didn't sign anything, Rowan. I swear." Rowan stared at her, reading the panic trembling beneath her makeup. Then the operating room doors burst open. "Doctor." Wyatt emerged, still wearing gloves flecked with blood. Rowan rushed forward. "Is she?" But the doctor raised a hand, breath uneven, eyes grim. "We stabilized Harper for the moment, but the baby needs to be delivered now. If we wait, we lose both." Rowan's heart nearly stopped. "And there's something else," Dr. Wyatt added. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Harper regained consciousness briefly, and she named who she believes tried to harm her." Rowan's pulse thudded in his ears. "Who?" he whispered. The doctor turned, staring toward the waiting area right where Preston had just walked in. Preston Hale walked into the waiting area with the swagger of a man who believed the world still bent for him. His tie was loosened, his expression annoyed as if the entire hospital was an inconvenience he intended to bill someone for later. But the moment his eyes caught the sight of Dr. Wyatt standing beside Rowan, something in his stance shifted. "What's going on?" Preston demanded. "Why was I called back?" Dr. Wyatt didn't bother with pleasantries. "Your wife regained consciousness very briefly. She identified someone as the cause of her distress." Preston blinked, swallowing hard. "What? Who?" Rowan stared at him, waiting. And Dr. Wyatt delivered the words like a blade. "She named you." Silence detonated through the corridor. Preston's face went slack, then twisted with outrage. "Me?" She said, "Me? That's ridiculous. She's confused, medicated, emotional." "No," Rowan cut in. "She's finally clear." Kendra, still shaken, stepped closer. "Preston. She knows about the documents. She knows what you were doing." Preston shot her a look so venomous it made her flinch. "You need to shut your mouth." But Kendra didn't move, because she wasn't the same woman she'd been an hour ago, the one who thought Preston Hale was her golden ticket. Now she understood she'd been another pawn. Rowan reached into his jacket and pulled out Harper's phone. "We have proof, Preston." Preston froze when Rowan tapped the screen. The recording played the same damning conversation Preston had hoped would stay buried forever. "As long as the account stays under her name, all inquiries go to her. No one connects anything to me." Kendra's gasp cut the air. Rowan's eyes burned. Even Dr. Wyatt looked horrified. Preston tried to grab the phone, but Rowan stepped back. "It's too late. This file is already backed up. And others know about it." "You think a recording will stick?" Preston hissed. "You think anyone will believe a pregnant woman over me? I have reputation. I have influence." Rowan stepped closer, voice low and lethal. "And you have motive." Preston's jaw clenched. "I didn't hurt her." "You abandoned her," Rowan snapped. "You ignored her when she begged you for help. And now your baby is dying because of it." For the first time, Preston's confidence cracked. His breathing hitched, his hands shook. But the fear wasn't for Harper or the child, it was for himself. Before Rowan could speak again, another alarm shrieked down the hall. A nurse sprinted past them. "Emergency in OR 2, we're losing fetal oxygen." Dr. Wyatt rushed after her, shouting orders. Rowan turned to follow, but Preston grabbed his arm, fingers digging in. "You think you've won?" Preston hissed, eyes wild. "You have no idea what I've set in motion." Rowan ripped his arm free, and at that exact moment, the hospital intercom sounded with a chilling announcement: "Security to maternity wing. Possible breach." Rowan didn't hesitate. The intercom's warning, "Security to maternity wing," sent icy dread straight through him. A breach. Here, tonight. When Harper and her baby were hanging between life and death, he sprinted down the corridor, weaving around nurses and orderlies, ignoring Preston's shouts echoing behind him. The hospital transformed from a place of healing into a maze of danger, every sharp corner a possible threat. When he reached the maternity wing, 2 security guards were already restraining a man in a dark coat near the service entrance. Rowan's breath caught. The man wasn't random, he was familiar. Raymond Fisk, Preston's longtime financial fixer. The same man who'd been quietly cleaning Preston's messes for years. Raymond struggled against the guards. "I'm just visiting family," he barked. One guard held up a small black device found in his coat, an encrypted drive. Rowan felt sick. That wasn't for family, that was for erasing evidence. "Where were you going?" Rowan demanded. Raymond smirked. "Wouldn't you like to know?" Before Rowan could speak, Preston burst into the hallway, out of breath and wild-eyed. "Let him go," he shouted. "He works for me." The guards didn't move. Rowan turned slowly. "Of course he does." Raymond's lips curled. "You always were too noble for this world, Mercer." Harper was a liability. Preston was just tying loose ends. Preston snapped, "Shut up," but it was too late. Rowan moved forward until he was inches from Preston. "You sent him here. To do what? Finish what you started?" "I didn't send anyone," Preston insisted, but his voice faltered, cracking under the weight of the truth closing in. Raymond laughed darkly. "He didn't have to send me, Mercer. I know how to read desperation. His whole empire's built on panic and paperwork." Rowan's pulse thudded. "What was on that drive?" Raymond didn't answer, but his silence was louder than any confession. The guards dragged Raymond away, just as Dr. Wyatt rushed down the hallway again, face pale, breath uneven. "We need you both," he said urgently. "Now." Rowan felt his legs weaken. "Is Harper?" "She's stable," the doctor said quickly. "But we need a legal decision immediately." Preston stepped forward. "Legal decision?" Dr. Wyatt nodded. The baby's heart rate crashed again. "We need consent for an emergency procedure." His eyes hardened, and Harper named her medical proxy before she lost consciousness. Preston lifted his chin. "She chose me." Dr. Wyatt looked at him, then shook his head. "No, she didn't." Preston's face fell. "Then who?" Dr. Wyatt turned slowly toward Rowan. "She chose him." For a moment, the entire hallway fell silent, as if the hospital itself were holding its breath. Rowan felt the weight of Dr. Wyatt's words crash over him, heavy, shocking, irreversible. She chose him. Not her husband. Not the man bound to her on paper. But the man who showed up when she was dying. Preston staggered back a step, color draining from his face. "That's impossible," he snapped. "She wouldn't choose him over me. I'm her husband." Dr. Wyatt's tone didn't waver. Mr. Hale, she signed the directive days ago. You weren't listed. Rowan swallowed hard. The knowledge hit him like a punch to the gut, not because he wanted authority, but because Harper had trusted him with the most vulnerable decision of her life. He placed a hand on the wall to steady himself. "What do you need from me?" Rowan asked quietly. Dr. Wyatt exhaled. "We need consent to operate. The baby is in distress. Harper's body can't sustain both of them much longer. If we delay, we risk losing them." Rowan nodded, throat tight. "Do whatever you need to save her." Preston lunged forward. "You can't make that decision. You're not family." Rowan stepped directly into his path, eyes cold. "Family isn't defined by paperwork. It's defined by who shows up." End quote. Preston's mask cracked, panic flashing through his gaze. "You don't know what you're doing. If you sign off on this and something goes wrong, that's on you. You'll carry it." Rowan didn't blink. "I'll carry it, gladly, because she deserves someone who will fight for her life, not profit from her death." Preston trembled with rage. "This is my child too." Rowan's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "Is it? Or was Harper just another name you plan to use and discard?" Before Preston could retaliate, the doors to the maternity OR slid open, and a surgical nurse rushed out. "We need the decision now." The baby's oxygen levels just dropped again. Rowan inhaled deeply, steadying himself, feeling the responsibility settle into his bones. "I consent," he said firmly. "Save Harper. And save the baby if you can." The nurse nodded sharply and disappeared back into the OR. Preston stood frozen, fury and fear twisting together. "You're ruining everything," he hissed. Rowan turned toward him slowly. "No, Preston, you did." Before either man could say more, Dr. Wyatt's pager beeped violently. He glanced down, and his expression darkened. He met Rowan's eyes. "We have another problem," he said. "The financial office just alerted me. Someone tried to access Harper's medical account remotely." Rowan felt his stomach drop. "Who?" he demanded. Dr. Wyatt hesitated. "The access came from Preston's home computer, 20 minutes ago." Rowan felt the words hit him like a blunt strike to the chest. Access from Preston's home computer. Of course. Preston wasn't at the hospital when the attempt was made. He had been too busy pacing the hallway, pretending to care. Which meant only one thing. He'd planned ahead. Preston stiffened, his jaw clenching. "My computer? That doesn't mean anything." "Someone could have hacked?" Rowan stepped closer, voice low and razor sharp. "No one hacks a man who's already hacking his own wife's life." Dr. Wyatt cleared his throat. The breach attempt targeted her insurance, her directives, and all financial ties associated with the birth. Someone was trying to erase or reassign authorization. Preston's face shifted, panic flickering through the cracks of his arrogance. "You don't know it was me." But Kendra, who had been quietly crying near the wall, finally spoke up. "Preston, stop. You told me you needed her medical access cleared before tomorrow. You said everything had to look clean." Preston spun toward her. "You stupid." Rowan lunged forward, placing himself between them. "Watch your mouth." Kendra backed away, trembling. "I didn't know what you were doing. I didn't know she'd end up here. I thought you just wanted out of the marriage. I didn't know you were using her as a shield," Rowan finished. Kendra nodded weakly. Preston's composure cracked entirely. He ran both hands through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. "You don't understand. If the accounts stay in her name, the investigation lands on her. I can't let that happen." Rowan stared at him in disbelief. "So instead of admitting what you did, you'd rather let a pregnant woman take the fall. Bosca." End quote. Preston snapped back, voice rising. "She was supposed to sign the dissolution papers weeks ago. I was giving her a chance to walk away clean. She's the one who stalled." "Because she didn't know," Rowan roared. "You kept her in the dark while she trusted you with her life." Before Preston could respond, an administrator rushed down the hallway with a security officer in tow. "Mr. Hale?" the administrator called out. Preston straightened abruptly, swallowing hard. "What now?" The administrator handed the security officer a folder. "We received a fraud alert from your bank. Unusual sequence of withdrawals, tied to accounts under Harper Lane's name." Kendra gasped. Rowan's stomach twisted. Preston stepped backward. "That's impossible." "No," the officer said sternly. "It's intentional." The administrator added, Your access attempts have been flagged as part of an ongoing investigation. Effective immediately, your financial privileges tied to Mrs. Lane have been suspended. Preston's face drained of all color. His empire, every stolen brick of it, was collapsing. He lunged toward the officer. "You can't do this. I'm her husband." Rowan's voice cut through the chaos, calm and lethal. "You were, until she learned who you really are." Before Preston could answer, the maternity doors burst open again. Dr. Wyatt's expression unreadable. "We need Rowan Mercer inside. Now." "Hey, Sev." Rowan pushed through the OR doors, his heart pounding hard enough to shake his entire body. The air inside was colder, sharper, thick with urgency. Nurses moved in synchronized chaos, their voices clipped and focused. Harper lay on the operating table, pale, still, fragile beyond measure. A monitor beeped rapidly beside her, its rhythm unstable. Dr. Wyatt beckoned Rowan closer. "She's stabilized enough for surgery, but we need your final confirmation. We've prepped for an emergency C-section. It's the only way to save the baby and possibly her." Rowan swallowed, forcing his voice steady. "Do it. Whatever gives her the best chance." Wyatt nodded. "Stay near the wall, out of the sterile field, but don't leave." Rowan stepped aside, clutching the letter Harper had written and the phone with her secret recording. Her courage, her fear, her hope, they all pulsed through him. He watched the surgical team begin, hands precise and swift. Each second felt like a century. Sweat gathered at Rowan's temples, but he didn't move. He whispered under his breath, words he'd never spoken aloud before. "You're not alone, Harper. Not anymore. Fight. Please fight." The baby's monitor beeped again, lower this time. Rowan flinched as the numbers dipped. A nurse called out, "Heart rate dropping." Dr. Wyatt responded instantly, "Increase oxygen flow. We move now." Rowan's chest tightened. He had faced corporate collapses, financial storms, impossible negotiations. But nothing terrified him like seeing Harper's life balanced between existence and disappearance. Then, a soft cry. Weak, but real. A baby's cry. Rowan's knees nearly buckled. A nurse lifted the tiny infant, small, fragile, fighting, and rushed to a warmer. Dr. Wyatt looked up from the operation table. "She's not out of danger," he warned. "We need to finish closing, but the baby is alive." Alive. The strongest word Rowan had ever heard. He let out a breath he'd been holding for hours, eyes burning, vision blurring. Harper had done it. She had held on long enough for her child, to enter the world. As the surgical team worked, a sudden commotion erupted outside the OR doors. Raised voices. "Security orders." Rowan tensed. A nurse slipped inside, whispering urgently to Dr. Wyatt. "Security has detained someone. They said he was trying to enter restricted areas." Wyatt's face hardened. "Preston?" "No," the nurse said. "Someone else claiming to have documents about Harper's case." Rowan's stomach twisted. Another piece of Preston's scheme? Dr. Wyatt gestured toward Rowan. "Can you check? We can't allow disruptions." Rowan hesitated, glancing at Harper, still unconscious, then nodded. He had to protect her, even from outside threats. He stepped toward the OR doors. As he pushed them open, security guards were restraining a desperate man clutching a folder stuffed with papers. And when Rowan saw the man's face, his blood ran ice cold. It wasn't Preston. It was someone Rowan never expected to see again, someone who knew the last missing piece of Preston's crimes. The man held by security was trembling, clutching the bulging folder like a shield. Rowan stopped short, shock rippling through him. "Elliot?" Rowan breathed. Elliot Gray, Preston's former accountant, the one who had vanished months before the financial investigation began. Rumors said he'd fled the country. Others said Preston had paid him off. But here he was disheveled, exhausted, terrified. "Rowan," Elliot gasped. I couldn't run anymore. I have everything. Every forged document, every transaction, every account under Harper's name." The head of hospital security tightened his grip. He tried to enter the maternity wing. Said it was life or death. Elliot nodded frantically. "It is. Preston was planning to flee tonight. He bought a one-way ticket to Dubai. He was going to let Harper take the fall for everything. I kept quiet too long, but when I heard she was in surgery..." His voice cracked. "I couldn't let her die without the truth." Rowan steadied him. "You did the right thing, And now it's over. As security escorted Elliot to awaiting investigators, Rowan hurried back to the OR. The doors opened again. Dr. Wyatt removing his gloves, his face exhausted but finally, mercifully, soft. She pulled through, he said. Both Harper and the baby are stable. Rowan closed his eyes, relief flooding through him so intensely it nearly brought him to his knees. Can I see her? In a few minutes, Dr. Wyatt said. But she's asking for you. Those words felt like a new beginning. Down the hall, chaos exploded again, but not the same kind. 2 police officers were handcuffing Preston, reading him his charges: financial fraud, identity abuse, attempted interference with medical documentation. Kendra stood nearby, arms wrapped around herself, tears streaking her cheeks, not from heartbreak, but from awakening. Preston lunged forward as they dragged him away. You think she'll choose you? You think you've won? Rowan didn't flinch. She survived. You lost the moment you stopped caring. Ava. Preston screamed, a desperate, broken sound swallowed by the hallway as officers pulled him out of sight for good. The world finally quieted. Minutes later, Rowan stepped into Harper's recovery room. She lay resting, pale but alive, her newborn daughter swaddled beside her. Her eyes fluttered open when she sensed him. Rowan, she whispered, voice soft but sure. Is it really over? He took her hand gently. Yes. You're safe. He can't touch you. He can't touch her. Not ever again. Ever. Harper looked at her baby, tears welling. She made it. You both did, Rowan murmured. Silence wrapped them warm this time, not terrifying. Then Harper whispered, Will you stay with us? Not because you feel responsible, but because you want to. Rowan leaned closer, touching her forehead gently with his, Harper. I've been waiting years for the chance. Her smile, small, fragile, hopeful, was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Outside the window, Manhattan lights shimmered like a city rebuilt from ashes. Inside the room, Harper Lane finally took her first peaceful breath in years, no longer a woman fighting to survive, but a mother beginning a new life, protected, loved, and free. And that was the true verdict of fate. Justice served. Bloodline saved. Future restored. And just like that, our story comes to a close. If you're still here with us right now, my friend, then something in Harper's journey touched your heart in a way only real pain and real courage can. So let's take a moment, just you and me, to breathe and look at this through a deeper lens. Harper's story reminds us of a quiet truth. Life may bring us heartbreak, betrayal, and moments when we think we're completely alone, but survival often begins the moment we choose to ask for help, even if our voice shakes. The Stoics said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength lies in how you respond." Harper responded with hope, even when hope felt impossible. And Rowan's loyalty teaches us something too. Sometimes the family we deserve isn't the one we're born into, but the one that shows up when everything falls apart. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." The suffering became the doorway to her freedom. If this story moved you, lifted you, or gave you even a moment of reflection, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more healing, more truth, and more powerful stories to this community we're building together. You matter, and you're never alone.